Hello and welcome to the third episode of Chronversations, the Chronicle podcast where we talk to a local newsmaker. Occasionally we'll talk to someone in-house, and in this case we're talking to a Chronicle alumni who has fallen on hard times. Andy Campbell, the senior editor and a reporter at HuffPost, has come to ask for his old job back. Is that correct, Andy?
You're absolutely right. I miss you guys so dearly.
We miss you too. Andy, known as Chron Cop during his time here at the Chronicle from, around 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, before he fled the coop to New York City. And I understand, Andy, that you have a book deal. Is that correct? Is that something you can talk about?
Listen, it's totally something I can talk about, and I appreciate you guys having me on for it. But I'm just happy to be here because, my best reporting times, my favorite reporting times were with the Chronicle and Centralia. I tell everyone, you guys gave me an ill-advised amount of agency back in those days, being a 21-year-old.
That's fair to say.
Recent college graduate living across the street from Market Street Pub. I don't know how I made it to work every morning, but we did do a lot of really good journalism, and I had a really good time. And I still think local news is the answer. But I am now a national extremism reporter, and I've covered a lot of sort of like Nazi types over the years, and I covered the Proud Boys in Portland, just south of you guys, since their beginnings in around 2016, and so I've been following their movements throughout all those times. And I just recently got a book deal, so I'm writing a book about the Proud Boys. And sort of the inroads that they've made in mainstream politics, despite being this sort of like punch-happy street gang, which I'm sure you guys hear a lot about because, they're out there brawling with counter-protesters for the last 4 years in Portland and Vancouver and elsewhere. So I'll be writing a book about those guys.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I was wondering about. Was your regional awareness of the Pacific Northwest something that drew you to that story? I think looking at the stories you've covered for HuffPost, looks like you work all around the country. But did that play a factor at all, just your interest in the Seattle area specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell we were covering mostly Trump rallies, but we noticed that there was sort of these online factions that we'd been covering showing up in real life, and like Nazi types and Proud Boy types and stuff, and they were showing up at Trump rallies, and specifically this one, like I said, street gang showing up in Portland and inviting people to fight them on the streets. Locals will argue over who starts the fights, but they've been hosting these brawls there forever, and so we really took a focus on Portland, mostly because with most extremists, they like to stay anonymous online. These guys didn't. They wanted you to know who they were, and they wanted to be loud, and they wanted to make fun of Ted Wheeler, the Portland mayor, for allowing them to stay around and waste taxpayer dollars, fighting and, having police officers come and shoot tear gas at them. And yeah, so we took interest mostly because of how loud they were being, but it was interesting to see that they were just hopping the border from Vancouver down to Portland and hosting these street brawls all the time.
Tough crowd.
Mainly because, yeah, really, exactly. They've really sort of been jerking Ted Wheeler's chain ever since. And I think it has a lot to say about the wider extremism movement. But the Pacific Northwest has certainly been kind of the lightning rod of extremism for a long time.
And this is not going to come as a surprise to you at all, but like in Lewis County, if you were to tell someone, I mean you personally, I'm writing a book about the Proud Boys, the follow-up might be, is the sequel going to be about Antifa? And I'm curious how you would answer that question.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of people writing books about all types of movements. And I personally have dealt with anti-fascists and Proud Boys and Nazis all in the street. But I think most of the work that all of these people do, whether it's, Nazis trying to recruit people, or it's anti-fascists, doxing Proud Boy types and putting their personal information online. Most of that stuff happens online. And so I as far as the threat of Antifa and masked people in the streets throwing bricks through your windows. And it is not comparable to the threat of far right nationalist street gangs, which they have a body count. Antifa really doesn't, not counting the guy that they killed in the Pacific Northwest. But the body count, I would say, is really the first metric that I would go for. And the threat just isn't there with Antifa. The real threat that we're seeing is these extremist gangs. The Proud Boys were some of the first in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. They plotted and planned, one of their own plotted and planned the Unite the Right Nazi rally in Charlottesville, which killed a woman and maimed many others. So if you're talking body counts, the threat just isn't equal.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that. If I didn't ask that question, I would be asked why I didn't get asked that question.
Oh, you still will be, I assure you.
It was a good question.
Tell us, what's your life like there at the HuffPost, both pre-COVID and then currently? Do you pass Ariana in the hallways? Do you know her personally?
Well, I did. Ariana hasn't been with us for a long time, and yeah, I know she left. But it's like I said. I mean, national or local news is the answer. National news it's fun, but you really don't build the sort of relationships that I got to build in Lewis County when I worked with you guys. And covering during COVID is difficult because, like you said, I'm all over the country usually. I haven't been able to move around as much, and so we're doing most of the work we do online. But yeah, it's made the job very, very difficult. I really miss being able to travel, and I certainly miss coming back home. It's funny. I was just looking before I came on this podcast at a story that I wrote for the Brooklyn paper, which is the paper that poached me from you guys back in 2010. Yeah, poached, I would say. They poached me, and one of the first stories I did for the Brooklyn paper was a story titled "Head to Brooklyn Tavern," the one in Washington State.
That's right. You quoted me in that story, Andy.
I quoted you, and I believe I had one of the final interviews with Ray DiMedio, the tavern's owner before he died. Yeah. And so the entire time I've been back, it's just been trying to get that feeling of local news back, because I love telling those stories. But because I had the experience with you guys, I'm able to take sort of tiny local stories like that and build them for a national audience. And so the experience was, well worth it.
So you worked at the New York Post, the Brooklyn paper, and now the HuffPost. Which paper, including the Chronicle, is the funnest to work for?
Oh, come on.
Oh my God. Hands down the Chronicle. And
absolutely. That's the answer I was wanting.
Like I said, I mean, I was a 21-year-old kid, the only, crime reporter in the county. And, I'm running around, the keys to the world, it felt like, telling local stories, and then, going to Market Street Pub afterwards and sharing, a pitcher of beer and some chicken strips with some unsavory characters. It was like the best. It was the best time of my life.
That particular iteration of the newsroom has been referred to for years as the Dirty Man News Team. Have you referred to it as that? And is that name justified?
I mean, listen. When I walk down the street, people say that was the heyday of American journalism. I don't know if I would call it the filthy man times, but no, I mean, we did a lot of great journalism despite our hangovers, and I'm really proud of what we did.
That was a very enjoyable era. I'd say you had Dan Schreiber then, you had Marquise Allen, you had of course Andy Campbell, and myself. I was also a reporter at that time. And you said we tossed you the keys to the crime beat, but I have to say we've done that for many people since, and no one did with it what you have done, what you did with it in your short amount of time. And you just had a hustle, and then also just like a bottomless appetite for the news. I went back and looked at some of your bylines, and they featured your report on attorneys at the Lewis County Courthouse fighting each other in the hallways. That was one of my favorites. There was John Baker from Greenwood Cemetery alleging that he was shooting at a mole, and it wasn't in fact trying to intimidate anyone. Let's see what else. You got tased along with former Sheriff Steve Mansfield.
Who could forget the video of me getting tased with my girlfriend at the time looking on? And that's really what got me my job at the Brooklyn paper. I had this, the editor of the Brooklyn paper was a former like tabloid guy who was like, I didn't care about anything you said until you showed me that video. And the fact that you plugged your blog at the end. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I plugged my blog at the end. He was very proud of that. And honestly, like that started my foyer into being the jackass of every newsroom that I went to after that. Because, everybody wanted me to do the stunts.
That's what it was. Everyone wanted you to do the stunts. You did a whole front page story on the mustaches of Riverside Fire Authority firefighters.
We need to bring that back.
Rocking.
I have in front of me the going away edition. We called it the Chronicle when you left the paper. And since you were about 21 at the time, and our vice president here of
I got
CT
you by
Publishing,
I got you by
22, I'm going to have him just read these headlines that we put together and see if they encapsulate your time here.
Andy to single mothers. Thanks, but I'm out of here. Will Andy make it in Brooklyn? Sadly, no.
You showed us.
You showed us. These are great.
I mean,
I got to say, this is the biggest cigarette I've ever seen in my mouth in this picture of you.
Yeah, we feature a photo of you in the newsroom with a cigarette hanging out of your mouth, some very shaggy hair. You're wearing a vest over a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Fashionable guy.
Like McLovin.
Actually, both photos you have a cigarette hanging out of your mouth.
One of the best. Yeah, I don't. I did quit smoking. The drinking a pitcher at the pub with chicken strips is still happening. But one of the best pictures from when I moved to Brooklyn was immediately getting yelled at on the street by an assemblyman for asking him a dumb question or something. And I have the same long hair and a cigarette in my mouth, having very little idea what an assemblyman even was at the time. So just really got the ringer immediately when I went over there. But the reason why I kept my job is because, again, like, it was the work ethic we got from like waking up way too early and just being in on the beat day in and day out. I mean, you guys throughout this whole time have been almost 24-hour workers. That's how we were when we were working together. I loved it.
Yeah, I think it was all about, quitting time around 7, and then we'd all go hang out and then have too good of a time and have to get up at 4 a.m. and write our stories for that day's edition. And we were daily then too. So
yeah, more and that's pressure. If nothing came over the scanner,
That's right.
Andy, let's circle around. Tell me, what does it feel like to get tased?
Oh my God. I mean, look, it doesn't feel good.
Did you defecate yourself?
I did not defecate myself. I remember just thinking that I wanted it to stop. And I also remember feeling very proud that Sheriff Mansfield at the time did not get tased for as long as I did.
You out-tased him.
You mentioned being the jackass of every newsroom you're in and people wanting you to do the stunts. What other notable stunts have you done over the last few years and at the various places you've worked?
Well, for the Brooklyn paper, one of the first articles that I did was they asked me to do a feature on a local sex toy shop that was opening up. And while, that aroused me as a reporter, I knew that a shop opening up isn't the greatest story ever. Nobody's going to want to read it. So I asked the shop, what kind of services do you guys do? I'd like to do something more niche about that. And they're like, well, one of the things we do is like when, your boyfriend or girlfriend goes out of town, we like to make a perfect cast of your member for them to keep while you're going out of town or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to do that. And so I gave the gift of love. Andy Campbell is now multiplied across New York City in the form of a perfect green dildo.
Oh my goodness.
Do you still have it?
Of course, I still have it.
I don't see it.
I'm not the only one.
I don't see it on your bookshelf in your Zoom background.
Oh, that's for a different show.
That's a showpiece.
Any other notable stunts you've had since then?
Oh, I mean, I did like a dad bod video. I drank cat poop coffee, which is like it's coffee that goes through the intestines of a cat-like creature called the civet, and then you drink it. It's a very smooth cup.
Is it pretty good?
What else? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I don't know.
You dated a porn star, I believe.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I covered porn for a long time, and I did a how to date a porn star thing, and I took her to mini golf in Vegas, which is, of course, the only date that you can go on with a porn star. Yeah, all the time. I'm the guy that they call when you might die or embarrass yourself. And it's worked out for me. I mean, that's how you make it in the big city, baby.
So you're a senior editor now. How long have you held that title, and what does it mean exactly at HuffPost?
A couple years. I basically, when I became an extremism reporter because I was like with you guys, a crime reporter who I'd fly around to mass shootings, national criminal trials and events, and then any disasters. And so after a while, it started turning to violence at political rallies. And so I started showing up at these political rallies. And that's how I kind of became an extremism reporter. I've since, moved on to helping, younger, newer reporters sort of do the same thing who are interested in that. And so naturally that turned into me becoming a breaking news editor. So I'm a senior editor on what is essentially the breaking news team. And so I'm editing copy and assigning stories. And then when people go out in the field, if there's, say, a mass shooting or some other event, I'm sort of coordinating where people are going and using the same skills I learned from you guys, which is, finding the addresses and phone numbers of people, telling reporters where to go and who to talk to and how.
That's awesome. Andy, going back to your book deal, how does something like that come up? Is it you reaching out, or does someone reach out to you for something like that?
It's different for everybody. But, I'm one of probably 20 or 30 sort of like reporters who since the beginning, since, the Donald Trump started running for president and these sort of new factions started showing up in the streets, who were like in the street at every event with them. And so we have this kind of like unique perspective where you might see a book about extremism, but it's by a professor who's doing a kind of antiseptic, dissection of extremism as a whole. But we were, sort of in the trenches with these guys, and we were getting tear gassed. And in Charlottesville, I got a balloon full of fecal matter, I should say, thrown at me. So we were kind of in the trenches, and while I didn't get approached, I knew that like I wanted to sort of give my, story and my angle before the moment passed. But also I think that there's like a story to be told about the future of extremism with these guys that I don't know if it can get told if, say, they change their name tomorrow or they go away or morph into something else. So, I reached out to an agent reached out to publishers. And as I was doing that, January 6th happened, and all these Proud Boys started getting arrested because they were a big part of the planning and execution of that insurrection. So the publishers, reached out back and said, this is something that we need to talk about. So it's publishing is like very much a luck of the draw thing. Maybe they don't care about your book, or maybe January 6th happens and all of a sudden they want to hear more about the Proud Boys. So it's half luck of the draw, half because I'm a kick-ass reporter.
Do you have any snippets of the book you can share with us now?
Ooh.
Well, that's very good. I haven't written the book yet. I'm in the process of like reporting it out and then I'll start writing it furiously before I have to turn it in. But I mean, it's going to include sort of like, the pitch, for example, that I had sort of started with Gavin McGinnis, who is a co-founder of Vice Media. I don't know if you guys know Vice Media. It's a New York digital media and magazine company, and it's now worldwide. They're on like HBO and Showtime and stuff. But Gavin McInnes was a co-founder. He started the Proud Boys here in New York, and started factions of them across the country. But when he started, the opening line of my pitch is like, Gavin McInnes stands in front of his, audience of like young angry men on his reactionary YouTube show, and pulls down his pants and stuffs a device inside himself, and yeah. And then he goes on to say some like racist and sexist things, and then but then somehow
He's not a cool guy.
He's not a cool guy. Not a cool guy at all. He's a bad man. But then you sort of fast forward, and here we are at January 6th, where Roger Stone, longtime Trump confidant and GOP surrogate, counts the Proud Boys as his personal bodyguard. They have inroads with mainstream politics. And so my pitch was, how did we go from this like goofy, silly, just bigoted dude, who says he has a drinking club, to we have now an extremist gang that has been, legitimized and justified by mainstream politics. And so that's with the book, I hope to show that and show sort of like how the Proud Boys have created a playbook for the next extremist movement like themselves. And that's a little scary.
And you mentioned talking before this, I think you said you were about a year out maybe from publication, or a year out from it being done, or what's your timeline for wrapping it up?
I mean, it's really hard to say. I would like for it to come. I mean, publishing runs at a glacial speed, but I'm doing it a little bit faster. I'm hoping it comes out around midterms. As a reporter, I'd like for it to come out tomorrow. But we sort of run at the speed of publishing, and I hope it comes out at midterms. I think, people are going to be talking a lot more about these movements again when midterms happen, because they're going to be scared of what happens, at the next election, and when people are voting and people are out in the street demonstrating, and whether there's, going to be violence again, and we'll see. But certainly people will be talking about it. So I hope it coincides with that, but I don't get to choose.
Will we get a box of signed copies delivered to the Chronicle?
You're damn right you will. And I expect a review, an excerpt. I gotta find some way to mention Centralia or Chehalis in there so that I can get it on your guys' bookshelves.
With that timeline in mind, are you at all concerned that the Proud Boys will no longer be relevant by midterms, and that maybe all this will be in the past by then? Do you think maybe we'll solve all those issues?
That's a good question, but I think again, like this is, it's the same thing with, I don't know if you guys know much about or have talked much about QAnon, this vast conspiracy theory that is sort of like taken over our moms on Facebook, and grandmas, absolutely. But like with something like that, I think that the story of the Proud Boys tells a wider story about the extremist movement, because they are, if there's anything that's happened over the last 4 years that involves extremists and Nazis and QAnon and all that stuff, the Proud Boys were in orbit, if not, the sort of architects of it. Mm-hmm. They were involved in Charlottesville. They helped plan and execute January 6th, and they showed how a bumbling group of drunk dudes can become a political enforcement arm, and that playbook is out there and is going to continue happening even if they disappeared tomorrow. And so my book is going to be more of a warning shot than it is a watch out for, what's going to happen next with the Proud Boys, more like watch what's going to happen because of what they did in the entire extremism movement.
Okay.
Did you, we'll wrap this up here pretty soon, but in all your reporting, you are like the picture of the reporter that's running towards the danger. When have you felt in the most danger, and has anyone ever committed a violent act against you? I know you mentioned a balloon full of fecal matter. That would certainly count, but anything else like that?
No, I mean, I really probably... I think the Unite the Right Nazi rally in Charlottesville in 2017 is probably where I felt like most immediately in danger, but it's always one of those things where you don't really realize until after the fact how dangerous it was, because there's adrenaline. You're sort of like thinking about your safety, but also getting the story at the same time. And so I think that was probably the one where I felt most immediately in danger, just because objects were flying, people were like beating the hell out of each other, and police weren't getting involved. And so it was a really sort of scary moment. But, there are a lot of stories that we've all done, I think, where we sort of look back and go, holy crap. I mean, in Portland, covering, Proud Boys rallies, there have been times when, the next day you find out that somebody standing next to you had a tear gas grenade lodged into their skull, or somebody got stabbed, or at Unite the Right, we found out that somebody had been shooting a .22 into the crowd, and we were standing right there. It's scary, and I really think that that all of those kinds of things, and what's going on in Portland really tells a story of how dangerous regular protests have become. And that's really, really concerning to me. And I'm sure it is to you guys and your listeners. Just going out and demonstrating now brings with it the threat of gun violence and just regular everyday brawls. So it's wild. It's wild out there.
So you mentioned tear gas earlier and getting tased. What is worse?
Good question.
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably getting tased, but also the tear gas lasts when you get tased, immediately when it's over, and you that's why I was able to sort of plug my blog immediately after after I got tased. The tear gas sticks with you, and often you have to keep doing your job, and so it sucks in a different kind of way.
I gotta love how knowledgeable you are. We're talking about political organizations, and now you can answer if getting tased or tear gassed is worse.
Yeah, he can answer all your questions about pornography as well.
yeah, absolutely.
All that stunt reporting trained him for this. So
pretty much all of my life. If you're wondering how dedicated I am to the bit, the cutest thing about my extremism reporting is that while I was in Charlottesville for the Nazi rally, I met my now fiance, who is not a Nazi, I promise. She's an extremism reporter for another company herself. So that was the biggest meet cute in my life. Is we met there, and it was love at first, Nazi.
That's I think that might be a good place to leave it. I can't say how much I appreciate you coming on our little podcast. I think it says a lot about your work that 11 years after you left, we still talk about you around here, and it says a lot about you that you're still willing to come on and spend some time with us. So
please, I've not grown out of those pants, and I love you guys, and I love the work you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on.
You're a big deal on Twitter as well. You can follow you at Andy B. Campbell, if that's correct.
That's right.
All right. Anything else from either of our hosts before we sign off?
Do you have a title for the book yet?
Tentative title is Proud. But that may change. I have no idea. I will force my voice upon you guys as soon as it comes out, so that I can talk to you again.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great, man.
Yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. We'll look for updates on the book, and I think that's all we got for you.
Hey, my first and last big interview for my book is here on Chronline, so I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Andy. You're still beautiful, man. Keep up the good work.
All right, you guys rock. Thank you.
All right, see you, man.